Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. It's my first trip to Oslo, and to come to the Science Park. It's very inspiring to see such an interest in innovation and in science and technology. Because as I will argue today, we are entering a very different era in the lifetime of our species. I would say that from the Stone Age to the Agrarian Age and all the way to the Industrial Age, where we finally moved into manufacturing and really saw technology move humanity forward, and then in the Information Age, we had microcomputers, we had the Intel chip. In 1989, Tim Berners-Lee made the World Wide Web. Then we had social media. But something is different. Is this really just the Information Age now deepening? I would say we are entering a whole new age because of the way technology is changing and the way our relationship with technology is changing. And I call this the hybrid age. And what is different about technology, really? Well, first of all, it's becoming ubiquitous. And when it becomes ubiquitous, it means it's everywhere and it's invisible. So as I mentioned, we are used to having discrete objects like our phone or a microwave or a fridge at home or a laptop. But the price of sensors is continually going down. Sensors that used to cost $10 now cost $1. And that means you could have many, many sensors, thousands of them in any physical space that you inhabit. And this means that Cisco predicts that 50 billion things will be connected to each other by 2020. And this is the Internet of Things. It's also becoming intelligent. I don't know if you followed, but when IBM Watson beat two leading contenders on Jeopardy in 2012 in the US, all of us were sitting on our sofas watching TV with our mouths wide open. The computer, for the first time, named after the founder of IBM, could actually understand idioms, could actually understand natural processing of language. It was really a breakthrough. And I'll tell you what was interesting. If you ever saw the picture, you had two human contestants, and you had one thing called IBM Watson. And when IBM Watson got something wrong, everybody in America said, ooh. And then when he got it right, we were cheering for him. At some level, we forgot that IBM Watson is a computer. And this is the other thing, it's becoming integrated. And the most obvious example of that is your mobile phone. It no longer just makes phone calls, it's your map, it's your Skype, it's your video, it's your camera, it's your little office in one. And as technologies become integrated, new technologies are born. And Brian Arthur wrote an amazing book about what technology wants, in which he really talked about the fact that technology is now essentially becoming almost like a species that is replicating and growing in diversity. And finally, coming back to what I said earlier, that it is becoming social. For the first time, we will have a relationship with technology. I'll take a small example. I don't know if you've seen that little vacuum cleaner called Zumba, and it's just on the floor, and you can leave it in your home, and it'll just zoom around and clean your whole apartment. And one of my friends came home one day, and his girlfriend had not left it on. And he said, but why didn't you leave it on? She said, oh, you know, it just gets so tired the whole time. And he was like, are you kidding me? I mean, basically, this idea, and you'll see later on, that robots, we begin to have feelings for them. There are a lot of implications. It's a very complicated relationship that we'll have with technology. But because I'm at a university, I thought people often think after they graduate, what kind of work will there be? So I thought I'd talk about work a little bit. And the first thing I wanted to do was, I wanted to kind of look at some of our colleagues and competitors in the hybrid age. So I'm going to introduce you to a few of them. This is Enki. Enki is a robotic teaching assistant that teaches English. Usually, English is a big, big requirement and demand in South Korea. In fact, 30,000 people, primarily from the US, Ireland, and Britain, go there, young people, to teach English. But now the government has invested $45 million to bring Enki to 8,000 kindergartens and 500 preschools by the end of this month. So this computer will be teaching us more than just English, but increasingly a lot of other things as well. Meet Da Vinci. Da Vinci cost $1.75 million. In 2011, 70% of prostate cancer injuries were done with the help of Da Vinci. And now he's being used in the US, in India, in Lebanon, and can be used for bladders, kidneys, and throat cancers. But make no mistake, recently it has come to light that due to human error in its programming, it still makes some mistakes. And this, he's my favorite. He's so handsome. This is Atlas. Atlas is 6 feet 2 inches tall. He's 320 pounds. He is amongst 8 robots that will be competing next in December, month after next, in America, in a competition to build the robot that will come and rescue you should you be trapped in a Fukushima-like incident. So this was inspired by Fukushima. 4 robots from Japan and 4 from the US and competing. DARPA has invested in this robot, and whoever wins has $2 million. So the next time there's a catastrophe, don't be nervous if Atlas comes to get you out. This is Paro. Paro is a robotic therapeutic seal. It costs $5,000. It was developed to keep old people company. And it is, it's not hugely intelligent. It's kind of intelligent. It has sensors. So if you touch it and caress its ears and you laugh afterwards, it understands that that made you happy. And so it will look towards you, it will wag its tail. So what the people who made it, they took it to old people's home in America and in Japan. And in America especially, the old people became very happy. They didn't feel as lonely. And the mom and dad didn't mind, right? Who wants to, not who wants to, but usually people don't want to spend that much time with their own parents. But the grandchildren came back and said, "Mommy, I don't like Paro. Grandma likes Paro more than she likes me." And I ask you, if you had to leave your grandmother who has Alzheimer's with a cat or a dog, one that has to be cleaned out after, that has to be fed, that could get lost, or a robotic cat that can inform you if grandma didn't take her pills on time, and that is always awake and looking after grandma and makes grandma happy, would you choose the live cat or the robotic cat? I don't think the answer is as obvious as you think. And finally, because Justin Bieber is so huge, I had to point out that even he may be replaced by Hatsune Miku. Hatsune Miku is a Japanese avatar. She's a rock star. She's a 16-year-old girl, and she never ages. She always wears these cute schoolgirl uniforms and has long hair, and she's incredibly popular. This is her concert in 2012. It's sold out. 2,000 people attended this concert, 160,000 people streamed in from all over the world. Hatsune Miku has a voice that's synthesized by technology and is just a virtual avatar. So you may think, okay, so everything I wanted to do, a robot can do, kind of. These are pilots. I'm not talking about things that were in some science fiction movie. They're happening today, and guess what? CEOs love them. They may not say that in public, unless they're Chinese. So the Chinese billionaire who owns Foxconn, and Foxconn makes all your iPhones, was quite honest. He said, I really like robots. I'm going to invest in 1 million robots because they're just easier to handle. They don't have work weeks. They don't have the French insisting they should only work for 35 hours a week. They work all the time, and they don't commit suicide. So it's unfortunately true that some people do. How many robots exist? Well, they say it's between 1.3 to 1.5 million robots right now. That's more than the population of Estonia, which is 1.39. And if he adds 1 million, and then there's a couple of more million, that may be more than the population of Norway in a couple of years. So I think for your students, when they're going out, and if you're trying to think about what the world will look like, you must think about, are you going into a field that's going to be automated? Another trend. Look, there are going to be entirely new categories of jobs because there's an integration of science and technology. This is Hieu Hair. He is a professor at MIT. He is looking very fashionable because he's on the cover of Wired Italia, which makes everybody look cool. He lost both his legs in a climbing accident, and he developed a whole new field called biomechatronics. It combines biology, mechanical engineering, and electronics, and he has developed some of the most sophisticated prosthetics that actually mimic the real gait better than ever before. And we'll see more of that. Look at this guy. Do you recognize him? So President Obama went to law school, Harvard Law School in the 1990s. And what did he study? Probably what everyone studies: contracts, negotiation, civil procedure. But if he went to law school 5 years from now, he would have to study data science. And I'll tell you why, because this blue screen is an e-discovery tool called Blackstone Discovery. And just in 1 month, it was able to process 1.5 million documents, looking for case precedents and other kinds of discovery that your first-year law associate, on which most law firms spend $150,000 a year, take months and months to do. And Blackstone Discovery only costs $100,000. So that is why, by the way, a number of law schools in the US are very worried, and I'm sure in other countries as well. And then this is cognitive computing. This is the ultimate challenge, right? When can you take neuroscience, nanoscience, and supercomputing and essentially make it like the brain? So IBM is trying to do that. Because the brain is so much more efficient at parallel processing and at highly interconnected, large-scale architectures that $55 million have been invested in a new project called Synapse. And you can imagine everything, all the intelligence that I was talking about, imagine what this creature can do. And this is truly phenomenal, the kinds of data analytics and algorithms that go into something like this. Again, this is not one discipline, this is 3, 4 disciplines. Should we really have departments that have just one discipline? Let's think about some jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago. Interaction designer. When did we have an interaction designer? Now, if you go to Silicon Valley, interaction designers are some of the highest paid job openings in the Valley. How do you interact with your iPhone? How will you interact with this wall? When everything and anything is digital, the best companies will be those that provide the best experience. Social media manager. This has also become quite common in very big companies, everywhere from GE to Apple to IBM. And cities are changing. You know, when I was growing up, cities, I thought it was really boring to work for the government. You had transport and water and other kinds of things they had to take care of. Michael Bloomberg put out a job placement for a chief digital officer, and 28-year-old Rachel Stern answered that email. And she got the job, and she transformed it into one of the most high-profile new city aid jobs for young people in the US. And San Francisco, Chicago, New York are all talking about and following how to use CDOs to make the millennial generation better connected to city governance. And of course, this is very new. This is the Google wearable glasses. In a few years, if Babak Pervez, who was a professor at University of Washington and was hired by the top secret lab Google X in Silicon Valley, he will make these glasses collapse into contact lenses. And all of them will have augmented reality, and all of them will be connected to the internet. And so this is something that really makes you think an apps developer for that kind of product will be there. But this is right now. This is boring, I'm sorry. Let's go to some things that will come, that maybe not your children, but high school students would do. This is 23andMe. 23andMe is a genetics company founded in Silicon Valley. And what they do is they find out your proclivity for cancer, heart disease, obesity, based on academic papers that have been written by professors all over the world. Just last month, they got the patent for what they call the Family Traits Inheritor Calculator. And what this means is that if you had IVF, you don't have to, but they are now looking into IVF treatments that are as cheap as $300. You could just have IVF and then check all your eggs and all your sperms and choose the egg and sperm that has the genes that you like. Tomorrow, you may want a musical child. We don't have the gene for that yet, but who knows, we might be able to sequence that. So a designer baby consultant will definitely be a job we'll see in the future. This is a pizza in space. Pizzas are very hard to make in space. You don't really have fresh ingredients. There's no gravity. But NASA just gave $125,000 to a mechanical engineer who said that he will make pizza in space using a 3D printer and protein molecules and powder sauces. So he's going to do that, and good luck to the astronauts who are having it. But this is the kind of thing we'll see more. Food chemists. How can you make food? Any kind of food you want, just appear, just print out. Right now, 3D printers are very slow. My purpose here is not to give a false sense of where we are, but to give you a sense of the prototypes that exist and how close we are to them. This is not science fiction, even if we're not there yet. And this is something that we'll see too, a certified ethical hacker. So we know hacking happens a lot. I actually like hackers. But I think that it's going to be questionable for companies who to hire to attack their own systems. Remember, this is particularly important in governments, because when you have critical infrastructure that is water, electricity, grids that could go down, defense systems, you want to test the resilience. You don't want the Chinese to test them. You want to test them yourself, but you want to know that you have someone who won't fly off to Hong Kong afterwards or to Russia. So I think that there will be ways to have good people of good moral standing become hackers for the government. So what does this mean? I'm in a university. Do universities teach this? Can they teach this? Should they teach this? Well, everybody talks about MOOCs, this massive open online courses, but really the conversation now is, why have a college degree? There are so many different places that you can get your skills from. Could you cobble together or collate a college degree by getting something from Harvard, by paying for something at an incubator like Startup Lab, and have everything make up what is called a D-bachelor's? This is a Silicon Valley startup called Degreed, and they will go and they will keep the information of all the different things that you're learning, and they will develop a certificate that you can show to everyone. Here's the key. It's personalized. It shows your skills, what you chose, what you're good at, and that's what employers want. They don't want that generic degree. If you listen to Google's Eric Schmidt, he doesn't look at GPAs. He doesn't look at GMAT scores. He wants to know who are the best hackers or the programmers. They go to GitHub, where programmers put and comment on code that they put online, or he puts them through Google's own training program. Maybe there are other things they care about. Do you like camping? Are you good at cooking? Mozilla has put out badges that can be certified for you. And so with the badges and the degrees, well, this means big data really lets employers know you in intimate detail. Not only what you studied, what you like, what you're good at, also knows who your friends are. More than that, it knows if your friends are good. Do they get drunk often? Did you drink last Thursday before your meeting? How would it know that? Why wouldn't it know that if your bar had facial recognition sensors in it? The question is, how would you know if that camera does not have facial recognition in it? How would you know if that camera is not connected to your health insurance company? Because software is invisible. If I put up a physical camera, you will know, but as it becomes miniature, you would not know. And that's something that citizens need to talk to their governments about. And it gets worse. So you have all this novel ways to measure marketability and your value. And more cities are doing this. Singapore, where I live now, I moved there from New York last year, has a number of sensor networks. Santander has 12,000 sensor networks in the city. Right now, they are measuring air pollution, but who's to say another sensor can't be put there that measures something else? What about video cameras? By the way, cameras are the next big thing. If you go to MIT Media Lab, the big buzz there is about cameras, how they're getting smaller and smaller and more effective at what data they can process. This can tell what your pulse rate is. And some sensors can tell how stressed out you are. If I look at all of you, and I had that, I could just casually look at my phone and see who's feeling stressed, who's feeling unhappy. If I was an employer, that would be very useful information for me if I was going to put you in a high-stress situation. And you would not even know that. So it's not to scare you. There are a lot of good things coming out, opportunities to be part of that, but it's very important to have your values right in the hybrid age. The human element is very important when you're partnering with technology. But I don't want to only talk about market demand. I want to talk about market supply, because we are changing too. And in some superficial or obvious ways, look, nobody wants a real job anymore. Maybe nobody's exaggerating, I'm exaggerating, but all my friends, they're not even in their 20s, they're 30s, 40s, 50s. They want to be freelancers. They, especially Americans, 40% of the workforce will be freelancers. And of course, your cloud computing has a lot to do with that. The workplace has changed. I'm going to check out a few co-working spaces like Mesh today in Oslo. I was very excited to see that. It's really cool. They're great places. But you don't even have to go there. Look at this guy. His name is Antonio Martos. You know, he's a remarkable man. He visits gunshot and bomb victims in Brazil, Iraq, Haiti. He's a great doctor, all from Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami. This is RP Vita, his robotic telepresence aid. It costs $5,000 a month to rent. You don't have to show up anywhere ever again if you didn't want to. And that's OK. We can still collaborate. And impromptu meetings. This is actually quite simple. It's a CTX virtual keyboard. Anybody can sit together and do something. This is not very futuristic. I don't try to make things too futuristic because it seems like I'm not being realistic. But if you could have meetings anywhere, then you can collaborate with anyone as well. So I grew up in Pakistan, and I was very fortunate. I got a scholarship, and I went to Harvard. But that was very unfair. It was very unjust to poor mechanics and children who could never do that. Now, this young boy in India can now take a robotics class by Sebastian Thurn on Coursera free if he has a laptop. And eventually, when everybody has a smartphone, he will be able to do that too. And this is something to celebrate, but let me tell you, it is also something to be aware of, because all of Asia is coming after your jobs then, all of Africa. All those poor young people, oh, poor them, let's give them some food. Just wait, they're coming after your food. It's a good thing. You can collaborate with them. But don't underestimate people. The poor now will have access to things because of technology. And this is what's exciting. We talk about MOOCs. I talk about MOORs, M-O-O-R, and M-O-O-P. At University of San Diego, there's a professor. He has a class in bioinformatics. And he has said, anybody who takes my class, I will put you in a research lab with a renowned bioinformatics professor from all over the world. Research labs, that is so hard to get into. But this kid, sitting somewhere in Bangladesh, will now have that opportunity and then can commercialize it. I think that is really the true power of online collaboration. But let's go a little deeper. Let's really think about who we will be. And I think we will change. I'm going to give you a very tiny example. In May of this year, Princeton University scientists printed out this ear on a 3D printer. They used stem cells from ear cartilage and nanosensors. This is the first time they merged electronics with biology. And this means that if, like the other things that have been 3D printed, like the trachea and other physical things. If I was to, let's say I worked in the orchestra, but there was a lot of competition. I really want to get into the Philharmonic. I need a better ear. This ear can hear at frequencies higher and greater than the human ear. And it won't be that expensive either. So this is an enhanced ear. It is in prototype. And believe me, some people will take up this ear and many, many other biological parts like that. But what about the brain? This is Zach Voter. He lost his leg 4 years ago in a motorbike accident. Last month, he climbed 2,000 stairs and didn't get tired. That's very hard. If you've ever known someone who has an amputated leg, they get very tired because they have to pull the leg up, and the other leg has to compensate. But this leg, he is directly communicating with it through his thoughts, which is a huge breakthrough in Chicago. And this means that we will begin to see all kinds of augmented features that are potentially going to change who we are. We will truly become cyborgs if we wanted to. The human heart, it's been around for 3 decades. But you know, if you have a heart attack right now, you can get an artificial heart. But if your heart has totally failed, you can't be helped, because we don't have a purely synthetic heart. Now, in France, for $220,000, now you can. It's purely synthetic, and it is powered by lithium batteries. So it's kind of like Iron Man. I don't know if you saw that movie, where he has, outside power. That is now going to be possible. It was just announced. And that will, again, change the way we power ourselves. If you're feeling unwell, and you get a checkup, and your heart is not doing that well, and your doctor says, get a heart transplant, why not get a better heart? Why wouldn't you? Like a much better heart that makes you feel 20 again, young, fit, fresh. And who's doing this? Well, the soldiers are doing this. DARPA is doing this. They're already developing things where people can have the ability to go for 40 hours without sleep, can carry things they've never carried before in terms of weight. So if your thinking, has this ever been tested? Not sure about the Norwegian army, but most big armies in the world are testing these programs. And let me tell you this much. If resource-rich countries like Norway or Saudi Arabia or China decide to augment, subsidize, like you have welfare service. Welfare services, you can take certain medication and become smarter. Nobody in the world can compete with such a civilization. And finally, you thought, at least I can retire. It'll be all over. When will it be over? Did you know that the California Life Company by Google has been started for the first time? It's treating aging as a disease and death as a problem. And this is the cover of Time magazine. Because most people die of aging-related diseases. So if you can stop that, then you won't die unless you have an accident or do something silly. That means you will work a lot longer. And all those constraints and opportunities that I mentioned, the constant disruptions, you better have a mindset that accommodates that and that adjusts to that. So I'm just going to talk briefly about a few things that I think are important to succeed in future labor markets. I think it's important to treat technology as a language. I'm in Singapore, and there's a big rush to learn Mandarin. Believe it or not, it was actually in New York when I had my daughter. She was not even born yet. And everybody was asking me, did you get a Chinese nanny? And are you putting her in that Chinese school? Well, increasingly, we'll be able to have automatic translation that's facilitated by robots, and the translation will be very, very good. But what we do need to understand is we need to teach technology as a language, not as a tool, as a language that allows you, like English or Norwegian, to express yourself and to really articulate and be creative and to experiment. And I think that is something that will really make a difference to our ability to control this technology. Ultimately, the fear is, who will control this technology? Who will manipulate us? And you don't want that. You want to be a human technology co-evolution and co-civilization. Estonia is trying to do that. They don't call it e-Estonia for nothing. They have started a program where 6th graders are taught robotics and computer science. And they're rolling it out to all their schools. And they have been really quite aggressive and proactive about doing this. This is Quest to Learn. And what Quest to Learn is an experimental school in New York. And what they do is they have an attitude that says, we don't believe that things should be taught in isolation. I don't want a math class or a physics class. I don't want a language class. I want everything together. And the only way for me to learn that is for me to build things. So they're trying to build a bridge or some contraption, and they're using anything that they can find. And through that, they're learning chemistry, physics, engineering. They're learning collaboration. They are learning how to articulate their ideas. They're learning both the humanities and the science and engineering. I am taking a Mommy and Me robotics class in Singapore with my 4-year-old daughter. And a lot of it is really, I'm seeing firsthand how children learn and pick up on these things, but they learn multiple disciplines. And that's systems thinking. And systems thinking should not be taught as a course. People should experience it as much as possible. Lego Mindstorms. I love Lego Mindstorms. I'm sure a lot of people use that. But Lego Mindstorms was inspired by a man at MIT called Simon Papert. And Simon Papert is my hero. And I encourage you all to read about him. He talked about learning theories, in particular the constructivism learning methodology. And in that, he said, the job of the teacher is not to teach or impart knowledge, but to create the conditions for invention, which is quite difficult to do. But using technology, you put certain basic building blocks in place, and then you mentor people or children who themselves try to figure it out. So we are always afraid. I don't know how the Norwegian education system is, but even in the US, and especially in Asia, we are always given the answers. And you cannot be innovative without failing, without collaborating, without tinkering. And you should neither have a fear of failure, nor should you be lazy about it. So I'll tell you something. I've been reading about all this stuff. I didn't grow up like this. I used to read literature and development economics. I worked in villages in Pakistan. And I was like, I'm going to be a tinkerer now, because I'm telling everybody to do that. So I took my toaster, and I started unscrewing it, and my kids were watching. I could not put it back together. I was very frustrated very early on. I just didn't have the mental discipline, the focus. I don't know, I'm an entrepreneur now, but I could see if I had been doing that for a long time, it would have really taught me something. And if I had done that with other kids or other people in my age group in Pakistan, it would have really made a difference. I think we underestimate how important it is, especially when we live in an age of hyperstimulation. It's very important to discipline yourself, to be focused with technology. Before I came here, I just gave a talk at Cambridge International Examinations. And a number of schools said, we give our children iPads. We are so high tech. And I said, that's like throwing your child in a swimming pool without teaching them how to swim. Please don't do that. Please don't just give them the internet, give them tools, give them the pleasure of building something with technology, and that is really the key. And now you can do that. You have Shapeways. As you know, Shapeways is a company where you can upload any blueprint and print it out on a 3D printer. It just received $50 million in funding. And there are many examples of very big companies like General Electric that want to think like small companies, and they are now collaborating with companies like Shapeways to actually build and have maker festivals. So I'm very excited that you're having a maker meet right after this. And I'd like to end with this, because I've talked a lot about universities and schools. And then people ask me, so is there no room for universities and schools? And I would say they've never been more important. if we can only think differently about them. Universities are important because people need mentorship, and they need guidance. They need values. They need someone to tell you it's OK if you fail. And there's nobody more important than a teacher who can do that. So this flipped teaching model, this technology-driven model, is centered around the learner, but also around the teacher. Because you need to know your rights, and you need to know your access to privacy. If you're building technology, you need to know the ethical way of doing it. You need to understand design intuitively, what the rules are, how it works, but you also need to push back if you feel you're being manipulated by companies and by technologies. We are only beginning to see this. And it will change who we are. My friend Jeremy Bailenson has a lab at Stanford University. It's an immersive lab. And you basically put on these immersive goggles, and he gives it to children. And they go there, and they see themselves swimming with dolphins. And then 1 week later, their parents ask them, hey, remember we went to the beach and we swam with dolphins? And they say, yeah, we remember that. And they cannot be convinced that it was not real. It has actually changed their memory. And there are many examples of that. So technology is a double-edged sword. You can use it, but you can also must protect yourself and others from it. This idea of walled gardens and structure and agency is very important. I'm sure you know if each one of us Googled Syria, or let's say cosmopolitan right now, all of us would get a different result. Because Google has been following what we like. And so we think the world is becoming more like us, but it isn't. We're just in the same echo bubble where we're getting the search results we like, and we are reinforcing that algorithm. And so we need to be aware of these things. And finally, we'll have multiple identities. I showed you robotic telepresence, but we'll have virtual avatars. It's very, very complicated for people. When people play video games, for about 20 minutes, they're very aggressive afterwards if they play war or other kinds of games. So we need to protect our children. And I think all of these things, this is the new role of the university. That can be anywhere, anytime, where you have a mentor, you have a guide, and that helps you build things. It helps create the conditions for innovation. When they were doing all this research and massive online courses, one professor said, I've noticed one thing, that people who don't go to universities don't have a civic sense. And I can believe that. There's something about being in a place together that makes a real difference. So we have to find that balance. And I'm really pleased to be here. I'm very honored to be here today. I hope that was interesting and useful. And I look forward to continuing the conversation afterwards. Thank you. Thank you so much.